And welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. Our very special guests today are both in the northern Midwest. Tatyana St. Germain and Mark Naidicz are both in Wisconsin, right?
That's correct.
Right. Well, welcome to Global TV Talk Show again. So this episode here, this edition, we have to talk about the great quit or the resignation or whatever it's called, but focus now on leadership development. And so companies, Mark, from your experience, is this like a unique time where companies are rethinking what kind of leadership they have, and then leaders are rethinking, do I belong here? Is that going on in spades now?
Well, I think, what's happened in the last few years, especially with COVID, has created a whole new working model, as we've talked about a number of times, Ed. I think where the kind of the opportunity and the challenge, if you will, for companies is those companies that have been committed to and continuously developing their employees and specifically growing their talent around leadership. Because as we all know, people typically don't quit companies. They quit or they quiet quit because they're not committed, or they're not aligned with, their leadership. Right. So I think that's one of the key things. I think the opportunity is a positive for companies that have developed that as part of their strategy. That development is a continuous process. It's not an event. It's not going to a training program once or twice. It's really, how do you look at, and I think where companies have been also very successful is how they look at the whole person today, given the environment that we've been in the last 3 or 4 years. So I think that is something that companies that have not thought about this and don't have a culture of continuous learning and development are going to be companies where I believe they're going to have more people that are going to be either quitting or quiet quitting, whatever you want to call it.
Tatyana, who's doing the assessment or who's calling for it? Is it the board or is it the CEO or somebody else?
It happens across the board. Probably depends on the size of the organization. And to Mark's point, best-in-class companies, we see it from the research, best-in-class companies have a people strategy and a leadership strategy that can support business goals. So if your organization's goals, regardless of the size or industry, are to stay in business, to prosper, and to continue to drive results, well, you need to have the leaders that drive those results. You need to have the right people in the right positions more than ever. And imagine the scary thought if your best leaders, your key people, decide to say goodbye January 1st. So I've seen HR folks, CEOs, operations leaders reach out to me, as well as individual executives who talk about lack of feedback and lack of opportunities for growth. And Mark and I had that recent example. And I was I heard the statistic, I think it was on one of the webinars I was on. Over half of people said that a company they quit, the company could have done something about it to prevent their exit. And so think about the leadership. If you're a leader and you don't feel like you belong and you don't have opportunities for growth and you don't even get feedback, that's a problem. And so one of the methods and tools to kind of facilitate that process, feedback, is of course assessments. So they reach out to consultants such as myself, leadership development assessments, such as 360s, which is a 360-degree feedback process, and also tools like PXT Select, which help. It's a self-assessment, and it helps a leader evaluate their leadership approach, because everybody has their own style, their own approach to leading. I really believe everybody's unique and they have their own path. to be effective and successful, but they need to be really rooted in what makes them tick, what makes them special, what are their strengths and weaknesses. And once they have this information, then they can move forward in the development process.
If I may just ask you to redefine for the audience out there, 360. I mean, I know it's like a round robin kind of a view, mirrors everywhere, but give me a couple of examples of what 360 is.
So a 360 feedback tool gathers feedback about leaders' abilities and skills, leadership competencies, how they show up, for example, in communication or delegating responsibility or advancing company mission. There's a variety of competencies and skill sets. So they're being evaluated by their bosses, by their peers, direct reports. Sometimes we include a group of internal clients or even outside clients, vendors. So anyone this leader interacts with in their leadership capacity, and they can provide that type of feedback, including comments, in an anonymous and confidential fashion. So we always protect the innocent, and hopefully get a really honest feedback. And then the information is gathered in one report, and gaps are identified, and some suggestions for improvement development.
Yeah. Now, Mark, and of course, Tatyana, for you too, I have this question about the nature of being a leader, being a senior manager. Mark, first to you. People have different rapport with different people, right, Mark? And so, I mean, doesn't that come through in how somebody's going to view, like, let's just say I'm your employee and you're going to give me some feedback or something like that, or an assessment, and you're going to see that I'm more likable with you and with some other person who I don't have a relationship with really. I'm going to not perhaps seem the same way. How does that work? I think I'm garbling what I'm trying to say here.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I think in a 360 format, you're typically connecting with people that you're identifying people that have had enough experience working with you that they can give some perspective. Okay. And it's both kind of objective, in that there's specific questions that may be asked that Tatyana highlighted, but it also gives an opportunity for commentary at the end. Many 360 tools do that, and I find that incredibly valuable. To your point is some people may know people better, right? And some may not, but one of the benefits of both of those opportunities is that people will give you their lens, right, of what they see. And in that lens is where the value becomes. So, one of the old adages that we use in the business relative to feedback is, certainly feedback is a gift. Strengths are strengths, but strengths overdone can become a problem. Okay. So, one of the pieces of feedback I've gotten in my career, and you probably can, certainly Tatyana, is that I'm very passionate about what I do. Sometimes that passion can come off as being dominating. Sometimes that passion can be, a number of different things. So I have to kind of check myself every time we do one of these, or anything that I'm involved in that I'm very passionate about. And so that's been a lifelong kind of process for me. It's not to say that you change who you are and what you stand for and all those things, but it's being able to adapt and adjust based on the environment. Right. So I think situational leadership is one of the core skills that we all learn. And as I often get from my wife is feedback. And that's good, right? Because feedback is a gift and she is a great mentor and coach to me, because even though she doesn't necessarily work in my business, she knows me better than anyone else. So she can give me that kind of, process, or even when we're having family gatherings. So I think it's not just, this whole thing around 360 is not just for the development of the person and their work. What I've seen over the years, it's the development in the person in their life. So Tatyana can speak to that too, maybe.
Yes, Tatyana.
Absolutely. Well, we're not just leaders in organizations, we're also humans, and we're leaders in life. So even in my executive coaching practice and all the leadership development conversations, inadvertently we're going to dip into that personal stuff, because who you are as a person is going to drive how you're going to show up as a leader in business, in work. And one point I wanted to make with respect, to answer your question, Ed, no assessment is a magic bullet. Right. Okay, it's not going to give you all the answers you seek and make you a perfect person if you read this report. And also 360 tools are perception-based tools. So I think that's what you were talking about. Well, this person knows me better than the other person. We want to have a good balance of feedback participants so that at least you know what the perception out there is, because reputation and perception can make us and break us. However, that feedback should still be taken with a grain of salt, because it's just, perception. So it may or may not be rooted in reality. And as Mark said, that's when we also add that self-evaluation piece with the PXT Select, because that is going to tell us who you really are. That's the piece of reality. And when we combine the two pieces of data, perception and reality, then we can build a really strong development plan.
Interesting. Mark, can I, to both of you actually, but Mark first, this issue of interim execs, let's say I was honored and asked to step into a role, and I go into a company, nobody knows who I am, and I don't know them. So how does that work? What is the introduction? How is that handled to break ice or to enter the right way?
I think clarity of purpose of what the reasons are for the person coming in. I think, and I'm in this business as well. And I think that one of the ways in which it works very well is that people who have large and great depth and breadth of experience tend to do better in these kind of environments, because they may have had so many different opportunities in their career. While I only worked at 3 companies in my entire career, I had many different roles. And I think the experiences are what helps you to adapt quickly. Also the clarity of what the purpose of the engagement is, that's really important that we focus on. It's clear, it's understood, and this is where the person stays kind of in that environment. What we often find though is that those leaders that adapt really quickly and can do this exceptionally well tend to get more and more assignments. They're asked because they are really good at it. And there's also a reason why some people, like myself and others, they want to have those kind of interim possibilities, but then they want to take a break. And so, they know how to run this over time. And I think that it is a skill that is, I think, built off of good experiences to help you go into organizations. Consultants have to do this all the time. So it's similar to a consulting role. And, whether you worked in a company, but you were an internal consultant, and oftentimes that's the role that I played, that's how you can hopefully be successful. But it's not for everyone. It takes a certain kind of capability and skill.
Yeah. It's almost like being a relief pitcher in baseball.
That's a very good analogy. Yeah. Yep.
So, Tatyana, is there a special set of assessments for looking at the interim person?
Well, interim executives bring in, I think the value they bring in is in their varied experience, as Mark said. They bring a lot of experiences, just a different mindset. They come in as an outsider, so perhaps they can see certain things, point out certain issues that people who have been working in the business have not had a chance or opportunity or ability to see. But the type of assessments that we use with both internal and incumbent leaders, as well as incoming interim leaders, are the same. So it's still the concept and the process is the same or similar. It's just how we implement it might be different.
Right. I think the only thing I would add to that's a great point, Tatyana, is, in the normal assessment, you get to see certain things that the person excels at. So, this concept of agility and adaptability is a way in which we can kind of see this tends to be a strength of that person, which tends to lead to individuals that can move in very quickly and kind of do that versus individuals that are very methodical that want to plot through and but I think the tools, as you mentioned, do cover kind of both. And yeah, I've been taking these for 30 years, as most leaders have. Well, I shouldn't say most, because there's a lot of companies that don't do this, and that's part of the problem. I think you have to have self-awareness. Self-awareness is critical to become a really great leader, and you have to be able to have self-reflection, and that's what these tools help the person to kind of get to what those things they'd like to do, continue to do well, but also continue to grow and develop in.
You can't get to point B without knowing where
Right.
you are.
Right.
And so the assessment, particularly the 360, to kind of level sets, says here's where you are. Now let's talk about where you want to be and how you get there without changing who you are, because I really believe people don't change at their
This way.
core. So they don't change you, change what you do.
Great point. Yeah.
Pardon me. So about coaching, that excuse me, gosh. So coaching.
Bless you.
Thanks. So I was just drinking water because I had a dry attack, and
Right.
all of a sudden I got more dry, not wet.
Right.
So anyway, coaching. As we come to the last 6-7 minutes here, I hope I can make it. So, how would you coach me to stop coughing now? How would you? How do you coach somebody who seems to be Mr. Know-It-All? Tatyana, you're smiling.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think you've had this experience. I guess.
Those are my favorite. Those are my favorite. Because especially when we start with a 360, so they come into this role and come into the coaching engagement and they go, yeah, people are just stupid. And I've actually had leaders like that. And then they see the results of the assessment and it helps them really see their blind spots. So some of them, there's two options, obviously, to react to that kind of feedback. One is to be humbled by it and take steps. And the other one is to become defensive. And the thing about coaching is, as a coach, I can't perform miracles. I cannot take steps for the person. I am a guide. I am an accountability partner, sounding board, et cetera, et cetera. But I cannot be there to take the person by the hand and make things happen for them. They really need to be willing and committed to their improvement. However, even in those difficult defensive situations, I've found a way to connect with people, most of the time anyway, and find what they want. This is how I start all of my coaching engagements. It's not about other people. You can't control other people. Let's talk about you and what is it that you want. And even the most defensive people who don't want to work with others and whatever, I don't even know why they're in leadership position, in the very least, they want to be effective. They want to succeed. Usually they're highly driven individuals. And so that's where we start. So our coaching process and the action steps and development plan is slightly different for those individuals compared to some of the others who want different things.
Yeah, Mark?
Well, I think it gets back to the comment earlier about, being a good coach is helping the person do reflection, right? And they drive the change, right? We're responsible to create an environment for them to see things, right, that they may not otherwise have seen, and to develop plans. And I've never been in a coaching engagement where exactly what Tatyana does, most coaches do right away, is tell me the 3 goals. What are the 3 things that you want to do? I don't want 40. I want the 3 things that you want to work on. Maybe it's only one thing, right? Because we're, as humans, we can't get our head around getting excellent in many things in a short amount of time. It takes years. I've been practicing for a long time. It will always be those opportunities, but you learn to adjust and adapt. And that's where the value of coaching comes in. And it is very rewarding. And Tatyana's done an amazing work. We love to partner together because she has terrific expertise that I don't have. And I believe in the power of teams, right? And I may have 1 or 2 things that might be of value too. And that's why we sometimes work together that way, is that she's an expert in assessment. She's also an expert in coaching. But I also know that coaching is a very individualized sport, so to speak, right? And people have to have, in many ways, it's who you feel comfortable talking to, right? And so there's always going to be clients that Tatyana is going to have that probably will never be my clients, simply because of her great style and environment and how she operates. And maybe a little bit for me too, the same thing. And my experiences are different. I spent 35 years in corporate, world. And so some individuals like that kind of experience, and other people like, other kind of experience. So, that's what I love about, she's got great background and experience, and that's why we have a great partnership too.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And one of the first things I tell people, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
So it is, you're right, it's very individualized. But just to make a final comment on the coaching side, I think this coaching is what helps the leadership development process and assessment process stick. Because all too often we go, as organizations or as teams, we go through these wonderful assessments and it's fun and we learn things, but then it's like, well, now what?
Yeah.
Now it's, how do you make it stick? So there's some people who can take it and run with it and implement all these wonderful things and become a great leader. But then other people need accountability. They need a few extra steps to secure that practice, to secure that behavioral transformation and learning new habits. And that's what coaching is very helpful.
Yeah. Just one last comment, Ed. Marshall Goldsmith is the #1 coach in the world. Okay. Marshall Goldsmith has a coach that every day calls him and asks him his 6 daily questions. Okay. He would tell you that, because I've done a lot of focus and I've done a lot of certifications in Marshall Goldsmith's world. He would tell you that change is the hardest thing. Behavioral change is the hardest thing. And until you do it over and over and over and over and get feedback over and over and over, you won't be able to change. It is a daily process. So to Tatyana's point, and individuals who are successful in making change have to do it every single day. They have to keep focusing
Coach
on
too.
it. Yeah, coach
All
too.
great coaches have coaches.
Yeah.
Mark, if I could ask you to just zip into what you just said about 6 questions.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that. Could
Okay,
you tell
sure.
the audience, tell the audience?
Yeah, he said, what is my purpose in my life, as we all go through, right? And he says, these are the 6 most important things that I want to be accountable to. Okay. And I don't have his 6 daily questions, but certainly on his website, he lists, the things that he does, right? And I've adopted that as well in my own life. And so every day I have my 6 daily questions. Was I the first one is, did I listen better today? Okay, because that's an opportunity, right? So
Yeah.
I focus on, have I listened? Have I been the best husband, father, son that I can be today? Did I make a difference in someone's life today? Whatever those things are, it's whatever your purpose and mission is. But again, the repetition, the focus, and it's been really impactful for me and certainly for millions of other people that he's taught and coached. So I would encourage anyone to, just go to his website. The other thing is it's all free. So you could copy the 6 questions, and his purpose in life is to make, to create the next generation and the next generation of leaders, right? Of coaches who make a difference in the world.
This is fascinating stuff, and thank you for sharing that. I'm
Sure.
going to do something like that. I'm going to go check out that site.
That's great.
Because I didn't. I sort of do something like that, but not 6, and certainly not so organized.
Yeah.
Tatyana, I see in your signature line on the email you sent me, you have an invitation for people to drop by your virtual office on Wednesday mornings. So are you actually there, or do you have an avatar?
Actually there. I have 2 screens. I clock in and I'm there, and people can just pop in.
So they just show up.
Yep.
I mean, it's like a Zoom call or something,
Yep.
right?
It's a Zoom.
Yeah.
It's a Zoom room. So it's like it knocks. Somebody's waiting, so I'll let them in and say, "How can I help you?"
All from that link.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like a regular Zoom conference.
So Ed, I think
steal
next
some
week
ideas here.
Yeah. Oh, she's marvelous at connecting those dots. Maybe next week, Ed, we'll go on together.
Oh, that's a good
And she
one.
could give us some coaching.
Wednesday morning, let's see, I have a 6 a.m. I'm doing a talk show in Germany at 2 p.m. So
Wow.
I gotta think of it's
No.
9 hours. So it's
we'll do it another time.
No, no, I'll be ready to go after that, but not so early.
That's great.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being on Global TV Talk Show. This has really been practical stuff. I really appreciate it. The audience will dig it. Thank you,
Great.
Tatyana.
All right.
Thank you, Ed.
Good to see you, Ed.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
and be well. Bye-bye.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.